In January of 1982, two men, Kenneth Bracewell and Daniel Lee Hunsicker, registered a limited partnership in Franklin County, Ohio, under the name Redline Foundry, Inc., with operations based out of a repurposed warehouse on East Livingston Avenue, Columbus. The two had met during undergraduate studies at Ohio University and reunited in their late 30s, each bringing distinct skills. Bracewell was a mechanical engineer with a background in industrial tooling. Hunsicker held an MBA and had previously worked in logistics. Initial capital investment was evenly split, with both men contributing $20,000, Bracewell mortgaging a second property, and Hunsicker liquidating inherited bonds. The company specialized in small-batch custom metal fabrication, targeting auto restorers and defense subcontractors. Within 3 fiscal quarters, Redline secured a U.S. Army bid for precision brackets and a contract with Dorman Industries, boosting annual revenue by 217%. In April 1984, Redline expanded to a larger facility in Groveport, Ohio. It was at this point that internal conflict emerged. Bracewell advocated aggressive reinvestment. Hunsicker favored immediate dividend returns. Tensions escalated over expense audits and Hunsicker's frequent absenteeism. On September 14, 1985, Bracewell executed a clause in their partnership agreement, allowing for forced buyout on grounds of fiduciary breach. Hunsicker received $37,400, less than he anticipated, owing to deductions tied to equipment damages and unpaid tax obligations. Over the following year, Bracewell scaled Redline to a $3.2 million enterprise. In 1987, he purchased a 6-bedroom colonial revival estate on Haywood Hill Road in the Westerville suburb, north of Columbus. The estate featured imported granite exteriors, a heated lap pool, and an underground wine cellar. He moved in with his wife Lorraine and their 3 children. By contrast, Hunsicker's financial trajectory collapsed. Attempts to start his own fabrication business failed within 18 months due to mismanagement and poor credit. By 1989, he resided in a rented 1-bedroom apartment near Morse Road, a complex known for high turnover and low security. Employment was sporadic, consisting of temp work and occasional custodial contracts. Friends and associates later testified to Hunsicker's deteriorating state. He often referenced the life that should have been mine, fixated on Bracewell's success. Psychiatric records from a 1991 intake at Riverside Methodist Hospital indicated symptoms of obsessive rumination and latent delusional ideation, though he was discharged after 72 hours. In early July 1993, surveillance from a private investigator hired during an unrelated civil matter placed Hunsicker parked within line of sight of the Haywood Hill estate on multiple occasions. No direct confrontation occurred, and the activity was dismissed. On July 19, 1993, Lorraine Bracewell and her children departed for a 2-week vacation in Costa Rica, booked months in advance. Kenneth remained to oversee quarterly inventory audits at Redline. On July 22, Hunsicker was observed by his neighbor loading 2 red gasoline containers and a canvas duffel into the trunk of his 1981 Buick Regal. At approximately 11:45 a.m., he was seen parking 1 block from the Haywood Hill estate. At 12:09 p.m., smoke was reported by a cyclist on the Westerville Trail. What followed was a fire, a fatal miscalculation, and a manhunt that would unravel a decade of resentment and ambition. July 22, 1993, was clear and dry in Westerville, Ohio. Forecasts reported temperatures of 83 degrees Fahrenheit by midday with steady southwest winds. At 11:43 a.m., Daniel Lee Hunsicker departed from his apartment complex in a beige 1981 Buick Regal, carrying 2 5-gallon gasoline containers and a canvas duffel bag later found to contain gloves, a pry bar, and cloth rags. A receipt from a Circle K station confirmed gasoline was purchased at 10:58 a.m., with security footage capturing Hunsicker at the pump. He parked on the west end of Sycamore Avenue, 1 block from Kenneth Bracewell's estate, avoiding visibility from the main gate. Surveillance footage from a nearby home camera system, motion-triggered, recorded a male figure, consistent with Hunsicker's build and gait, walking along the wooded back access path to the Bracewell property at 11:57 a.m. The estate's main residence was unguarded and unmonitored due to recent cancellation of the home's security contract during renovations. Bracewell, inside the study on the second floor, was assumed to be reviewing vendor accounts. He had not been scheduled for any meetings that day. At 12:04 p.m., a motion sensor light in the garage was activated. Investigators later determined that entry was gained through the rear garage door, which had an aging latch and no alarm. Gasoline was poured in 3 concentrated locations: the base of the central staircase, the hallway carpet leading to the study, and the main dining room near the gas heating unit. A lighter was recovered near the staircase ignition point, its flint worn and blackened. Ignition was estimated at 12:09 p.m. The fire spread rapidly due to accelerant use and open interior spaces. Bracewell was found in a prone position at the top of the stairs, deceased from smoke inhalation and thermal injuries. He had not exited the study in time. Witnesses reported smoke visible from the Haywood Hill tree line by 12:13 p.m. Fire services arrived at 12:21 p.m., but by then the east and central wings were engulfed. Hunsicker was not seen leaving the scene. A search of nearby traffic cameras failed to place his vehicle within a 3-mile radius post-event. That afternoon, Hunsicker returned home by 2:17 p.m., per apartment CCTV. He remained inside for the next 18 hours. The fire at 3847 Haywood Hill Road was declared under control by 13:02 hours on July 22, 1993. Kenneth Bracewell's body was recovered at 1447 from the top of the main stairwell landing. Franklin County Coroner's Office confirmed death from asphyxiation due to smoke inhalation with secondary thermal injuries. No other persons were present in the home. Westerville Fire Department arson investigators initiated standard protocol. Multiple burn origin points and the presence of accelerant odors led to classification as a suspected arson within 3 hours. Canine units trained in accelerant detection confirmed gasoline traces in carpet fibers, baseboards, and along the stair treads. Charred fragments of a red plastic container handle were recovered from the dining room floor. Subsequent laboratory analysis matched the fragment to a common brand of 5-gallon gasoline cans, sold regionally at Circle K and Sunoco stations. A neighbor, Edward Cale, contacted police that evening after recalling a beige sedan parked for an unusual length of time near the wooded trail exit. He described the driver as a balding man in his 40s, white, stocky, wearing a windbreaker despite the heat. He also remembered seeing the man carry something red across the rear of the property around noon. Surveillance footage from a private residence on Sycamore Avenue, reviewed on July 24th, captured a figure leaving the area at 12:16 p.m. The man exited the wooded area, glanced toward Haywood Hill, and re-entered a tan sedan with a rusted passenger side panel. Investigators canvassed regional gas stations. Circle K at Oakland Park Avenue provided transaction logs and surveillance footage confirming a gasoline purchase by a man matching Hunsicker's description at 10:58 a.m. July 22nd, the vehicle matched a beige 1981 Buick Regal registered to Hunsicker. A forensic sweep of the Bracewell fire site revealed a boot print in a section of soot-laden tile near the garage entrance. Imprint analysis matched a size 11 Timberland sole. Hunsicker was known to wear the same brand and size, according to prior arrest booking records. On July 25th, a search warrant was issued for Hunsicker's apartment. Investigators recovered a pair of Timberland boots with partial soot traces, a near-empty gasoline can, and clothing consistent with eyewitness reports. Cloth fibers and soot samples were sent for lab analysis. Evidence consolidated by the end of July the 27th provided probable cause for arrest. At 6:12 hours on July 28, 1993, a warrant for the arrest of Daniel Lee Hunsicker was issued by the Franklin County Court of Common Pleas on charges of first-degree arson and second-degree homicide. Uniformed officers dispatched to his apartment on Bonham Avenue found the unit vacant. The front door was locked, but mail had accumulated, and his Buick Regal was missing from the lot. Initial attempts to trace Hunsicker through employment records, credit activity, or ATM usage produced no results. A BOLO, Be on the Lookout bulletin, was circulated by noon across Ohio, Indiana, and Kentucky. Hunsicker's last known image, a 1991 DMV renewal photo, was broadcast to media outlets, and a $5,000 reward was issued for information leading to his capture. Investigators tracked the last confirmed activity to July 22nd, when Hunsicker returned to his apartment post-arson. Surveillance footage showed no further comings or goings. Neighbors did not report seeing him since that date. The theory developed that he had fled immediately after the crime, likely switching vehicles and using cash reserves to remain untraceable. On August 1st, a tan Buick Regal was discovered abandoned in a long-term parking lot at the Dayton International Airport. The vehicle was unlocked, keys missing, and the license plates had been removed. Forensic examination yielded traces of gasoline residue in the trunk and a partial fingerprint on the inside of the driver's door handle, matching Hunsicker's right index print on file from a 1984 misdemeanor. However, no airline tickets had been issued in his name through Dayton. Investigators theorized that he may have used the airport solely to confuse law enforcement or to meet a contact for further transport. For 12 days, the investigation stalled. Anonymous tips placed Hunsicker in cities as varied as Toledo, Pittsburgh, and Charleston, West Virginia, but none were verified. A breakthrough occurred on August 14th, when a motel clerk in Zanesville, Ohio, reported a man staying under the name D. Huntley, who paid in cash and matched the suspect's description. The guest had stayed in room 7 at the Cross Timbers Motor Lodge, checked in on July 24th, and had vacated abruptly the morning of August 13th after asking directions to Marietta. Marietta Police Department was notified. Patrol units were alerted, and DMV records flagged for any vehicle registered locally to names similar to D. Huntley. On August 16th, an officer in Belpre, Ohio, a border town across the river from Parkersburg, West Virginia, identified a man loitering behind a Sunoco station matching Hunsicker's profile. When approached, the man attempted to flee. He was detained without incident behind the station at 17:08 hours. A folded Ohio state map, $482 in cash, and a Greyhound bus schedule were found in his pockets. The man gave his name as Don Halbert, but fingerprints confirmed the identity within 24 hours as Daniel Lee Hunsicker. He was transported to Franklin County Jail on August 17, 1993, held without bail. On August 20th, 1993, a Franklin County grand jury returned a true bill indicting Daniel Lee Hunsicker on 6 counts: 1 count of aggravated murder, ORC Section 2, 903.01; 1 count of aggravated arson, ORC Section 2, 909.02; 1 count of felony murder, ORC Section 2, 903.02; 2 counts of breaking and entering, ORC Section 2, 911.13; and 1 count of tampering with evidence, ORC Section 2, 921.12. Hunsicker entered a plea of not guilty at arraignment on August 23rd, represented by Public Defender Martin R. Lovell. The prosecution, led by Assistant District Attorney Julia Hendrickson, filed intent to seek life imprisonment without parole, citing premeditation, use of accelerants, and the presence of a victim in the structure as aggravating factors. The trial commenced on October 4th, 1993, before Judge Alan B. Kearns. Jury selection concluded on October 6th, with 12 seated jurors, 8 women, 4 men, and 2 alternates. Opening statements began October 7th. Prosecution. Evidence. Key forensic testimony included accelerant residue detected in multiple fire zones, confirmed gasoline traces on clothing recovered from Hunsicker's apartment, and match of boot impressions at the scene to Hunsicker's footwear. Fire investigators testified to the deliberate pattern of multiple ignition points, a hallmark of arson with intent to destroy and endanger life. Video footage from Circle K showing Hunsicker purchasing gasoline on the morning of July 22nd was presented. Witness Edward Cale testified under oath to observing Hunsicker on Sycamore Avenue, identifying him in court with no doubt. Additional circumstantial evidence included a recorded withdrawal of $500 from Hunsicker's bank account on July 21st, suggesting preparation for flight. Defense strategy centered on challenging the identification of Hunsicker at the scene and attempting to sever the connection between the arson and Bracewell's presence in the home. Lovell argued that the fire was intended as vandalism, not murder, and that the prosecution lacked direct evidence Hunsicker knew Bracewell was inside at the time. Cross-examination revealed no record of recent communication between Hunsicker and Bracewell. However, prosecution introduced psychiatric documentation from 1991 that recorded Hunsicker's statements about his former partner having taken everything and owed a reckoning. The defense called no witnesses. Hunsicker declined to testify. Closing arguments were delivered on October 19th. The prosecution emphasized the planning, motive, and deadly outcome. The defense urged jurors to consider the possibility of unintended death. The jury returned a verdict after 6 hours of deliberation on October 20th. Guilty on all 6 counts. Sentencing was held October 23rd. Kenneth Bracewell's widow, Lorraine, gave a prepared statement describing the toll of the loss on their children and the community. Judge Kearns imposed a sentence of life imprisonment without parole for aggravated murder, 25 years for arson, consecutive, and merged remaining counts for sentencing purposes. Hunsicker was remanded to the Ohio State Penitentiary. Following the October 1993 conviction of Daniel Lee Hunsicker, the Franklin County legal system entered the post-sentencing phase with community interest remaining high. The case had gained local notoriety as a rare instance of domestic arson involving a business-related vendetta that escalated to homicide. Regional newspapers referred to it as the Foundry Fire, though no formal name was adopted in the court record. Kenneth Bracewell's funeral was held on October 26, 1993, at St. Paul's Episcopal Church in Westerville. More than 200 mourners attended. He was eulogized by Redline Foundry's chief operations officer as a builder, mentor, and father who lived methodically and worked without malice. Lorraine Bracewell relocated with her children to Cincinnati by early 1994. In a probate proceeding that spring, her legal counsel filed a civil action against Hunsicker for wrongful death and property loss. The civil court ruled in her favor, issuing a default judgment for $1.86 million. No restitution was ever collected. Redline Foundry, though financially stable, suffered reputational damage due to media fixation on the partner's fractured past. Bracewell had remained the face of the company. Without him, Redline experienced client attrition. The firm was acquired in April 1996 by an Indiana-based manufacturer, closing all Ohio operations within the year. As for Hunsicker, he was initially housed at the Southern Ohio Correctional Facility in Lucasville. According to internal disciplinary records, he was a largely unremarkable inmate. He worked in the prison maintenance detail, declined all media interview requests, and never filed for appeal. A psychological evaluation conducted in February 1995 confirmed he remained convinced that Bracewell had engineered his ruin and that the fire had been an act of justice, not revenge. The case became the subject of a 1998 seminar by the Ohio Fire Investigators Association, presented as a cautionary example of personal grievance escalating to criminal enterprise. It was cited in several law enforcement training modules for its demonstration of predictable arsonist behavior, prior resentment, familiarity with the target structure, and attempted misdirection via relocation. In a 2002 letter to the Franklin County Prosecutor's Office, Lorraine Bracewell declined a request to contribute to a retrospective documentary on the case. She wrote, "It is not a story about a fire. It is a story about what envy does when it grows teeth." By 2007, the Haywood Hill property remained unsold. Insurance litigation delayed rebuilding, and the structure had been raised to foundation level. Local children reportedly called the vacant lot the burned house, though few remembered the man behind the crime. Daniel Lee Hunsicker died in state custody on May 8, 2011, at the age of 61 from complications related to untreated diabetes. With the death of Daniel Lee Hunsicker on May 8, 2011, the state of Ohio formally marked case OHFR 2563 as closed. No appeal was ever filed, no accomplices were identified, and no further inquiries remained pending. A final report from the Ohio Department of Rehabilitation and Correction described Hunsicker as non-disruptive, medically declining, and socially withdrawn. The Haywood Hill incident entered the Franklin County Law Enforcement Archive as a complete case, motive, act, apprehension, and conviction, all supported by physical and testimonial evidence. Among case analysts, it remained notable not for procedural complexity, but for the psychological clarity it revealed. Prosecutors and behavioral experts agreed. Envy, unacknowledged, persistent, and untreated, was the sole accelerant in a man who could otherwise have vanished into economic obscurity. A decade after the conviction, the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation, BCI, included the case in its 2003 annual review as part of its criminal personality and fire origin summary. It cited the Hunsicker case to emphasize a common profile among property-targeting arsonists: male, midlife, known to the victim, driven by perceived injustice and frequently failing in unrelated life domains. Kenneth Bracewell's name was later included in the Ohio Industrial Hall of Recognition, posthumously, for his contributions to mid-size manufacturing expansion in the 1980s. Redline Foundry was never revived under its original name. By 2015, few traces of the case remained in Westerville. The lot on Haywood Hill was sold at auction to a private developer. A new home, modern, angular, unrelated in style to the former structure, was completed in 2016. Local records list the current owners as having no connection to the incident. In internal review memoranda filed in late 2011, investigators noted that the success of the case stemmed from three primary factors: early witness cooperation, the presence of forensic accelerant patterns, and the suspect's predictable retreat behavior. There were no outstanding suspects, no alternate theories. Case file OHFR256. 3 remains permanently sealed, except by judicial request. Closure designation, resolved by conviction. Offender deceased. No appeal filed. The file's final entry, made by lead investigator Sergeant Marion O'Hara, reads simply, "He burned down a house to reclaim a life he thought was stolen. In doing so, he forfeited what remained of his own.